What I have projected up on the slide are some discussion questions. These should seem familiar. They very much are similar to the polling questions that we asked you. And here we really want to dive in and understand which of your symptoms of hypophosphatemia have the most significant impact on your life. When we're understanding which ones do have the greatest impact, we want to understand why. And as part of that, one way to think about it might be, is it because they have the greatest impact on those activities that are really most important to you that you're not able to do or do as well because of your hypophosphatemia? So I'd like to start off this conversation broad, having it open up to whichever symptoms or health effects of hypophosphatemia might be most burdensome to you. And I'd like to ask you to raise your hand, and again, when I call on you, just provide your name, the type of hypophosphatemia that you have, and please share your experience of a symptom that is most burdensome to you, and that follow-up question of why. So who would like to break the ice from our audience here today? This can cover any range of the issues we've talked about, whether it be fractures, dental abscesses, stiffness, pain, whatever it is that has that impact on you most.
Hi, I'm actually here for Elaine Jacobsen, who lives with XLH. And she wanted to be on the panel, but is not able to travel. So she says, hello, everyone. When I told my physical therapist that I was going to be doing this write-up, he jokingly suggested that all I had to say was, hello, my name is Elaine Jacobsen. I have XLH, and it sucks. That about sums it up, but I'm going to give you more details. And she's tried every treatment except the newest one. And the treatments are significant to the patient experience and contribute greatly to the social and psychological challenges presented by the disorder. This applies especially to those that significantly limit, interrupt, or prevent one's participation in life. I've come to call these visits to medical land. The first decade, it's interesting to note here that my mother had no outward symptoms and thus never even knew she had XLH until decades later when she was finally tested. My sister and I developed very severe bowing of the lower limbs. I was unable to stand, walk normally, or for normal periods of time. I also had aching pains in my legs, probably bone pain. Age 11 to 20, the severe bowing and problems with standing and walking continue. I developed a kidney stone from one of the treatments that I started during this period. These include continued need for braces, parathyroidectomy, massive doses of vitamin D, and a long visit to medical land for many osteotomy surgeries. Age 21 to 30, thanks to the osteotomy surgeries, I had some very good years here. No more braces. I could dance. I could wear non-orthopedic shoes, even clogs. I went to graduate school, becoming a professor of mathematics, and could climb the 4 flights of stairs to my office. But by my late 20s, even though I weighed only 95 pounds, I was unable to walk. It felt like my muscles were yelling, no more of this. The progressive decline had begun. I never got back to my best days from this point on. More symptoms in my 30s include vertigo attacks and hearing loss. I also start to need a wheelchair. At first, I could use a manual wheelchair, but by my late 30s, I could no longer do this and had to switch to a power scooter. I also had to revamp my career plans from professor to researcher in the commercial world, where I could work sitting at a desk. Age 41 to 50, the vertigo attacks get much worse, and my physical functioning is slowly ebbing away. Weakness begins in my neck and arms. It gets harder to go to work, shower, dress, cook, and get in and out of my scooter or the car, be comfortable without pain in various types of furniture or environments, participate in activities outside the home, and in general have enough stamina to get through the day. I can no longer drive. This progression is gradual, like watching grass grow. Eventually you know something's happening, but going to many doctors, even XLH experts, doesn't help much. So as usual, I simply adjust to the changes and keep on going. Age 51 to 60, now progression goes into overdrive and then off a cliff. By my mid-50s, my arms, shoulders, and upper back suddenly become so weak I can barely lift my arms at all. I cannot pick up a piece of paper, write, steer my scooter, or do much of anything. Within a year, the muscle weakness is affecting my whole body. I find a good physical therapist whose individualized treatment keeps me going a few more years while I'm hanging on by my fingernails to keep working. And I'm developing more and more joint pain, muscle pain, not bone pain, and weakness, fatigue, hearing loss, vertigo attacks, or dizziness with brain fog and loss of functional mobility. Age 61 to 70, I've given up hanging on by my fingernails and retire on disability early in my 60s. I no longer have to visit medical land, I live there. Actually, I'm in jail since I'm homebound. I cannot perform or have trouble with almost all the basic activities of daily living. And I can't do independent things such as shopping, meal preparation, etc. I use hearing aids. My hearing continues to worsen. I cannot watch TV as it makes me dizzy. I can barely use a computer or read for the same reason. And accessibility features on devices are still difficult. I only go out for medical appointments and almost always in an ambulance stretcher. So now she's worried about having to live in a long-term care facility in the future.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for sharing Elaine's story. And Elaine, if you're able to tune in by the webcast or you're seeing this as a recording, thank you for sharing your story. I think it's really a powerful description of the progression, even in adulthood itself. And so I would encourage you, I think that might be a nice way to think about this is, what might have been the thing that impacted your life most in your 20s, and how does that compare to what is impacting you most now?
My name is Nancy Allison. I have XLH. I just turned 60. When I had my osteotomies to correct the bowing, I thought that was the end of it. But really, the two things that have impacted me most over the last 10 years, 15 years, have been the hearing loss and the dental issues. And I've heard someone mention something about feet, and that's something I want to ask if maybe this is the right forum. But I find myself tripping over my own feet. I went to a podiatrist. They did some stuff. My massage therapist works through the stuff on my feet. But ironically, hearing, I didn't know this till I was 50, that my feet are deformed too from the XLH. That was like a revelation at age 50.
So quick follow-up question for you. You mentioned that now the things that impact you most are hearing loss and the dental issues. Why is that they now are the things that you're saying are the most burdensome?
The most worrisome?
Burdensome.
Burdensome.
Most biggest
I mean, the
issues.
hearing loss, I quit going to movies just because I couldn't hear. Ironically, I've probably been wearing hearing aids for like 30 years, but I finally, in the last year, bought some that are just wonderful. This morning, before I put them in, I think my TV in my room was like 55. When I put them in, it was down to 14. So they're really kind of amazing. I still miss a little bit. And the dental issues, it's every 4 months, which I'm sure everybody here can relate. So that's my story.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Carol Knight. The two things that impact me the most are kind of one blended into the other, and that is my bone pain and my muscle pain and stiffness. I'm blessed to have a sit-down job and to work at home, but even when it's time for my 15-minute break, I've only been sitting 2 hours. And when I try to stand up, the muscles in my back, my lower back in particular, just tighten up like they're spasming, and I have to stand still for a few minutes just to get my back to straighten up so that my legs can engage, so that I can walk to the bathroom, for example. And then, as I'm walking, the pain in my ankles or my knees or my hips or all of the above causes me to stumble. It's like they're catching on something and not flexing, and so I stumble. So I often use either a cane or a walker, sometimes a wheelchair. But the two things that are most detrimental for me are the muscle pain and back pain kind of combined together.
And Carol, has that been a pretty steady issue that you've had, or has it been more recent?
I've had the bone pain for as long as I can remember, even 4 or 5 years old, but it has gotten progressively worse.
Okay.
The muscle pain started probably about 10 or 15 years ago, and it's gotten severely worse.
I'm Ann Lewis from Connecticut. My daughter has XLH. She's 38. She was diagnosed at Yale when she was 2. Pain, 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 pain has sucked the life out of her. A vibrant, independent young woman, intelligent, educated, and she's now diminished till she has to live with her mother and father because she can no longer function. What was the difference in her 20s and now? I mean, her childhood was beautiful. She had doctor's appointments and a lot of medication. The pain didn't start until she was in her mid-20s. Tried everything. Bee venom therapy, yoga, guided meditation, for those of you who don't know what that is. You hold on to crystals and they blow smoke in your face to try and pretend the pain isn't there. They finally put her on steroids and it was beautiful. She had 2 beautiful months until her kidneys started to shut down. Medical marijuana didn't touch it. I want to talk about the big elephant in the room here is the new CDC guidelines, which are now interpreted as law, are preventing doctors from treating pain adequately. They're scared. They're being forced to diminish treatment for patients in pain clinics. It's not adequate, it's not fair, it's not legal, it's not right. My daughter is on the trial, and that's questionable whether that's going to continue because of, again, kidney problems. So what is she supposed to do? They're giving you the choice between taking illegal drugs, and you're going to run into fentanyl and that'll kill you, or commit suicide. I want to talk about suicide. That's what I want to talk about. I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable. Her life is uncomfortable. Pain has cost her everything. Jobs, relationships, children, everything. So where do you want to go with this?
You know, I think that's actually an extremely important perspective to share. Your daughter, the impact that pain has had on her life, you know, can you help me paint a picture of that for me? You said she was very vibrant, you know, was educated, successful.
I'm right here.
Oh,
I'm Karen Lewis.
Hi, Karen.
I'm an autosomal dominant case. I think I maybe took an aspirin once every 6 months as a kid. Totally normal childhood. Couldn't run the mile in gym class, but that kind of ruled. So I wasn't really complaining about that. And it wasn't until I turned 28, and I don't know what it was a switch flipped one day. And then it never got better. It's only ever decreased. And I was always told, like, you can do whatever you want, like go to grad school, blah, blah, blah. So I decided that I wanted to do a physical job, which in retrospect was stupid. But I'm a stage manager for music festivals, and I was for 15 years. I can't do that anymore. I set myself up to do big physical things because I was told that there were no limitations. You'll be over this when you're done growing. Don't worry about it. So I was like, okay. So I busted my butt, took all these crappy internships, eventually got recognized by the Grammys, got to do Lollapalooza, like really worked hard, and now it's gone.
Now what is it that...
Now I
you're
live
doing?
with Mom, and she has to help me put my bra on sometimes. It's really fun. So glad I went to grad school. Now my life revolves around, like, can I walk my dog today? That would be cool. And when is my next dose of medication? Because the pain comes before the medication has run its course. So that's...
And where is the pain? Is it bone pain, muscle pain? What part of your body?
Oh, it's bone pain. My right hip, well, the head of my femur has been broken since February 2013, and there's sort of not a lot they can do about it at this point. Explored a whole lot of options, but there's really nothing they can do. So it's hip pain, knee pain, ankle pain, feet pain, back pain, and the fatigue as well. I nanny sometimes, like 4 hours a day is about max I can do. So like Kelly, I've chosen not to have children because it's not fair. And that's the one thing I get emotional about as well.
We belong to a national organization called Don't Punish Pain. It's a grassroots project. It just started this spring. It's nonprofit. We don't accept donations. It's trying to give doctors their power back to treat us. instead of folding under the guise of the CDC guidelines. There are rallies coming up. If you go to the website www.don'tpunishpainrally, you'll find it. If there are medical people in the room, there are. There's a doctors collaborative there too. We want to support doctors and let them treat at least this part of the disease.
My name's Natasha. I just turned 30 last year, and up until 30, I felt like I had a very, very mild case of XLH. It wasn't even really in my mind when I was picking my career or anything. Almost right after I turned 30, I started getting really bad pains in my knees, and I went to the doctors, and I've had an osteotomy that went bad, and I haven't had it fixed yet, but it's rebowed, my leg's rebowed, and I need double tibial osteotomies now. And I can't keep a job. I've been trying to I just got married 2 years ago, so my husband and I have been trying to get off the ground. We bought a house, and now that all these medical things have come up, losing my job, having health insurance, it's really hard to have health insurance when you can't keep a job. And my husband just changed careers and doesn't have great insurance. And so I think the financial burden of it causes a lot of stress, and losing everything because of the disease. And that's my biggest fear, is that I'll lose my ability to have kids, and that the surgeries won't go well, because you hear so many times that you get the rebowing and things like that. So just the stress of everything, I think, has affected me a lot more than, it's affected me a lot mentally.
Sure.
Yeah, so.
Those are important aspects of living with hypophosphatemia to share, not only the direct physical burden, but the emotional,
So much mental.
mental burden as well. So thank you. And you also mentioned things that worried you the most about your future, and I want to encourage people to also share their concerns as part of this discussion.
Hi, I'm Robyn Courtney. I am the mom of a 26-year-old who had a sporadic case of XLH. He spent about 15 years. We live in Florida, so we flew to St. Louis Shriners Hospital twice a year for 15 years to have him treated, because we couldn't find a physician in Florida that had really taken care of anybody. We went with one endocrinologist to start, and he said, I've seen one case in 25 years, and it's treated the same way, so we'll just treat it the same way. So he was on medicines at 18 months old, 8 times a day, taking a powder, and everybody's been through it probably with their kids. So he's 26 years old now. He did pretty good. We kind of gave him you have 2 choices, honey. It's not going away, so either you embrace it and try to figure out how to live with it, or you be miserable, because it's going to be problems. It's just part of this disease, unfortunately. So he did pretty good. He was able to play lacrosse in high school. He was the slowest kid on the team, but his high school coach was nice enough to keep him in there until his senior year, and then he said he was too embarrassed because he was too slow to do it. And he managed through, I don't know if anybody else had Arnold-Chiari syndrome, which is not uncommon with some of these XLH kids, so he's had brain decompressions, and he's been through challenges. But he is in the middle of medical school right now, and that's why he couldn't be here. But one of the things he asked that I would please communicate is the bone pain. So he's got the joint pain, the stiffness, the muscle pain. And the other thing that isn't brought up, and I don't think your medications can help, but short stature. That's at least for some boys especially, that's a big deal. So that was probably his number 2 issue with it. He has changed his type of medicine that he's decided to get into. He thought he was going to be anesthesia or surgical, but when he was rotating, he realized there's no way that he can stand as many hours, so he's decided to go to emergency medicine, where they let them sit to talk to the patients. So that's probably been the biggest impact, and it's getting worse. At 26 now, he's noticing it's getting progressively worse. No sports as far as team activities. He just can't keep up with kids his age, but he does do a lot of gym. So he's a weightlifter, and he tries to balance it to try and help that mental health that goes along with the issue that you have with a chronic illness. So he's trying to balance it that way. But I just heard about the new drug for adults, so I said I'm coming and I'm going to listen to it, and we're going to see about getting you on it because they need to be on something to help them get through this.
My name is Sandhya, and I'm on the afternoon panel, so I'm not going to share my story right now, but one of the things that's really striking me as I sit here is that it's so nice for me to hear from people who are in their late 20s, early 30s, late 30s. One of the most isolating things is to be in this age range, be a Gen X or whatever you call it. We're the forgotten ones when it comes to XLH. I've felt that way for years. There's so much for the children. When you're an older adult, you don't get told you can't have a hip replacement or a knee replacement because you're too young. But then there's this group of us who no one tells us if we should have children, what we can expect, how to take care of our bodies. And there's just been no support or treatment for us. And so I appreciate everyone telling their stories.
My name is Sandy Briskin, and we're some of the Pacific Coast people. My main problem, because I was born with it, my mother had it, and she was spontaneous. I had it before I knew what was going on. I had children, and now they have children, and now have great-grandchildren. So I'm along with the ones that are over the 7 number. But anyway, I think one of the most disastrous problems we have is that we can't get medical care. Because in the Pacific Coast, I did the Sacramento, San Francisco searching all of my life. And now I've moved to Montana. I hide in the woods, which everybody teases me about, but it's my choice with my husband, to be rural. I've had more care and attention from this little rural doctor that lives where we are than I ever have. The insurance, for instance, in Sacramento that my daughter has, they send her to UC Davis. I went the whole UC Davis route. They always tell you they know what's going on. None of them have a clue. San Francisco, I was at Shriner, San Francisco since my children were tiny. They did more damage to my son. My son actually passed away from poor medical care, some of the things they did. So how do we find people on the West Coast that can help us? That's my big question. I mean, it's not like we're not trying. We have Salt Lake. I've ventured as far as Salt Lake now. Yeah. Been to the university hospitals, gone to many orthopedic doctors and endocrinologists. None of them pay attention. And I'm sure all of you know that feeling, but it makes you crazy after a while. I had 2 parathyroid glands that had huge tumors on them, and I needed them removed because I was having terrible problems with my parathyroid. And the doctor in Utah recently diagnosed me with vertigo because he wouldn't take out the parathyroid glands. That wasn't the problem. So, I got them done somewhere else by my own research. But I just need to know, how do you go about finding somebody that knows what they're talking about?
Hopefully one of the goals of today is by sharing your experiences, and not only with the disease, but especially in the afternoon session, we're going to be talking about approaches to treatment or lack of treatment for particular symptoms and burdens. What really are the unmet needs that you have, and that information is going to allow the XLH network to not only, do the people that we have in the room today be better educated about these issues, but be able to advocate more broadly, and that includes with the healthcare system. So thank you for sharing, and I want to encourage everyone to keep sharing their own experiences, because that's what it is that's going to help really educate the entire system.
My comment is more about the burden of care as it seems that my XLH has progressed as I've gotten older, and it's more about the burden of care for me on my husband and the impact it makes on our relationship. And surely we're not the more my physical demands are on him, or the more things that I can't do, the more stress it makes on our relationship. And surely we're not the only ones who have that